Hi, guys, and welcome to another session. This is Sessions with an Adoption Attorney. My name is Anthony Zurica, and today is episode 7 of Sessions, and we have a great guest for you guys today. Her name is Yellin. She's the president of the Adoption Network Law Center. The Adoption Network Law Center offers services to both adoptive parents and birth mothers. Briefly, when I started out on my journey with adoption and working in the adoption field, I always tried to align myself with professionals or colleagues that had passion about adoption, as much passion as I did. And while I don't know Kristen very well, I can appreciate her career from afar, and I look forward to learning more about her and the Adoption Network Law Center. So today we're going to be discussing adoption costs. We're going to go over 5 questions about adoption costs. Kristen will be answering these questions, and we'll be discussing them. And if you guys have any other, further follow-up questions, you always feel free to reach out to me on the web. I'm www.nycadoptionlawyer.com, on Twitter at nycadoptionlaw, and on Instagram at nycadoptionlawyer. Kristen will give you all her information. But again, Adoption Network is very simple, adoptionnetwork.com. And let's take it away. Here's Kristen.
Hi, Anthony. Thank you. Thanks for having me today. I'm hoping that we can impart some information for people to get started on possibly a wonderful journey of adoption if that's where they're headed.
Okay, great. So we're going to get right into it. And again, we'll be discussing adoption costs today. So the first question I have for Kristen is, a lot of people are quoted the total cost of an adoption, whether that number is $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. What does that generally encompass or include? And we could talk the agency route, and we could also talk about an independent adoption for those that understand the differences between the two. So go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is such an important question for when people are calling entities, attorneys, or agencies to really understand what the overall costs are and how they break down. Mm-hmm. You have to start from the beginning, which is, what is it going to take to adopt a child? Well, there's a home study. That's a cost. And what a lot of people forget about is, once they are placed with a child, that home study provider also provides post-placement visits. So that, to me, is a third-party cost that I put on one side, which is, okay, home study and post-placement. Another big part of an adoption cost is whether or not a family seeks to have advertising, marketing of their profile to agencies, to birth moms across the country, or just within their state. So that could vary widely. Here at Adoption Network Law Center, we're kind of all-encompassing. So we have a marketing piece so that the client is exposed to birth moms throughout the country, and it's a marketing fee. In addition, there's adoption services that come with any entity like Adoption Network Law Center, even with a straight local agency, meaning you need somebody to manage the adoption plan. So that usually comes with a fee. Now, an agency fee or an adoption services fee, that could be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. A marketing fee, again, depending on what vehicle the family uses. There are some online which are more cost effective, but to me don't do the job that needs to get done, which is have some direct contact with actual potential birth moms. So marketing fees could, again, range from a few $100s per month on a web page versus a few $1,000s to make sure your profile is exposed to birth moms. So that's a big part of the adoption world these days. And I've been at this a little over 10 years, and I've seen the landscape change a little bit because of social media, because of what is available to the general public. And knowledge is important. However, we always caution families, be very careful if you try to do this on your own, because there is a great possibility for scams to occur, for people to really be taken advantage of through that vehicle. So that's a big part of the start of the journey, is the marketing, the home study. Next, you have to encompass what is it going to take once you are presented an opportunity or matched with a birth mom. there's representation, legal representation that has to occur, both on the birth parent side and on the adoptive parent side. So again, that's going to vary by state. It's going to vary by circumstances. We tell clients to be prepared for anywhere, we call it the legal pathway. What's it going to take to have a legally sound adoption such that birth mom's relinquishment, her consent to place her child is done properly, termination of a birth father's rights, whether, what's going to be entailed there, as well as if it's an interstate adoption, the interstate compact clearance process, the finalization of the adoption. That's all what we call the legal pathway to complete the adoption. We tell clients to be prepared for anywhere these days from $6,000, $7,000 all the way upwards of $15,000 for the appropriate representation. Again, going to vary by state, going to vary a bit by circumstances. Here in California, a birth mom can allege more than one birth father, and each birth father has to be dealt with independently. So that could drive fees up. So that's the representation for birth mom and adoptive parents as well. And then people always forget about cushioning for travel. If it's going to be an interstate adoption, we do a lot of mostly interstate. I mean, we do a fair amount in California. In our legal department here, myself and our other attorneys are licensed to practice law here in California, but not in Texas. So we work with clients all over the country, and we help to organize and oversee and put together the interstate adoption, but they have local representation. But they often forget about travel and lodging. When you have an interstate adoption, you have to be prepared to stay in that state 1, possibly 2 weeks after a birth mom actually signs her legal documents relinquishing her rights.
Right.
So that's something to cushion. So when I look at the big umbrella and people, friends of mine, or they know somebody finds out what I do for my work, and they say, well, how much is an adoption? A private adoption. I always tell them it can range, but be prepared. Probably a $40,000 to $50,000 budget if you're going to be encompassing an interstate adoption that could have those varying factors as far as, also let's not forget about birth mom expenses. I know that's another question coming up. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that is also part of a budget that we hear, make sure that we alert and encompass in the overall cost of adoption. So home study and post-placement visits, whether there's going to be marketing and adoption services involved, representation for the birth mom as well as the adopting parents in their respective states, birth mom living expenses, which we'll dive into a little more specifically, and then the travel. So that's what you always want to ask.
Right.
When
our second question was really supposed to be, talking about international adoptions, because a lot of people do have questions about why is it so much more expensive, and you and I kind of discussed that a little bit earlier. And really, the short answer is that travel takes up a lot of the cost when you're dealing with an international adoption. So I don't want to get too much into the international adoption part of it right now, but just to segue a little bit onto something you said about total cost. How do you deal with the situation, or not specifically, just in general, of a client who might not necessarily have $40,000 or $50,000 to spend on an adoption? And I understand that not everyone does have that money, but some people, when clients come to meet me specifically, I tell them, listen, it's not free. It costs money to do this. But there are ways that you could maximize your budget and things like that. So I try to work with them on that. But what do you guys do out there that tries to help someone who, because it's a daunting number. When you say it out loud, it's a very daunting number, and you don't want to discourage someone, especially me when a client comes in for a first consult. And they're here with, bright-eyed. They have no idea what they're getting into, and they don't even know how the process works. And then it's just throw out a number like that. It takes them aback. It takes them back, and I try to to explain it in as much detail as I can about about how they could maximize their budget. But what do you guys do out there specifically in regards to a question like that?
And we get it a lot, Anthony. Honestly, and you're right. There's a lot of people who we hear from that that's not a budget that they can handle. There are options, and we love to work with people and get them to the point where they are feeling comfortable and capable of taking on the financial aspect of the adoption journey. Because to us here, it's super important that a client is not only emotionally ready for this process, but also financially prepared. So a couple things that we do, and this is a great question for people to be asking when they do start calling around or start investigating the processes. Is there anything that you as an organization can do? We have an assisted pricing program here that I'm very, very proud of, that we started a number of years ago for lower income, less than a certain amount of income, and we work with them. And it never hurts to ask. I get people asking all the time, like, gosh, we would love to be able to do it. Can we, set up a payment plan? Can we do something? The other big thing that we focus on with prospective adoptive families at the very early stages is have them check with their employers. Do they get any kind of adoption credit or reimbursement? We work with a lot of military families. There is a military reimbursement, which is wonderful. So there's that. Check with your employers. The Dave Thomas Foundation is a great resource for that because they update a listing every year of companies that offer those. But sometimes even small local companies will offer some kind of reimbursement through their HR department. Tax credit, something that they should talk to their tax. And, we're going to talk a little bit about more at the end there, but that's something that you have to think about in how it will affect your budget in the future. So talking to a tax advisor about that. But it's really about trying to help a lower income family understand the nature of how they want to approach the adoption journey. And I'll tell you, we get plenty of people who will go the less expensive route for a year or two, who will try with a local agency because it costs a lot less, or try to do it online themselves. And then invariably, they're usually calling us back in a year or two because they just don't have much. So we're always wanting to work with families in that regard to help them make sure that they can handle the financial aspect of it. There's also organizations that we work with here out in California with loans, lower interest loans for adoption purposes and things like that.
Yeah, that's great.
So just good questions to ask when anybody is calling around. What is it that they can do for you?
Right. Yeah, because people really don't know that. They don't know that there's loans available, grants available. We'll discuss that a little bit more later. But sticking on this topic of the cost, when we were discussing a little bit in the first question, question number 3 is, what are birth mother expenses, and who has to pay them, or who can pay them? A lot of clients say, I have to pay for a birth mother? I don't understand what that even means. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Generally speaking, you have to think of it in terms of pregnancy-related expenses. Out here in California, we use the word reasonable. They have to be reasonably related to the pregnancy. There are, again, this is going to vary by state, and there are some that are super liberal with what is allowed to be paid. We always, again, approach it generally with anyone inquiring is you have to think in terms of housing, food, things like electricity, phone, things like that are pretty much the basics. You also have to approach it in terms of it is considered a gift. It is not something that, if the birth mom were to have a change of heart, which again, we'll be talking about, that you can go after her for that. There are some states that are starting to, institute some laws that will allow some kind of at least recovery approach to someone who they felt is being scammed. Actually, I did have a scenario a year ago with a birth mom, and it was pursued in Arizona, and she was prosecuted. And which I'm glad, because it was an example that we want to be careful of.
Of course, yeah.
Will we receive any monies back from her? No. But will she be able to do this again to somebody else? We sure hope not, now that, she's been taught her lesson. So they're generally speaking, again, it will be determined by the particular state law where the birth mom is in, what law is going to be followed and what's allowed. But think in terms of pregnancy-related expenses, and it's usually during the course of her pregnancy, whenever she is, say, matched with a family, and up to 6 to 8 weeks post-birth. So again, part of the budget, how we approach it is we look at what is going to be her monthly needs. Also an important question, I think, for prospective adopting parents to ask any entity when they are working towards an adoption is, how do they disperse those expenses? Mm-hmm. Here as a law center, I love the fact of the protection that we have is it's paid out through a trust account. We don't just send birth mom money. We need to see bills. We need to have a corresponding lease or something that who we're paying those expenses to, so that we have a record for our clients. So it's a good question to ask when anybody goes about this.
And I don't want you to get too much into specifics, especially in any individual cases. But and I only ask this question because I've seen things like this come up, and I want to see how your thoughts on things like this, where a birth mom would want something like a photographer. Where does reasonable where does the line end for reasonableness, and it just gets into a little extraneous? Can you speak a little bit about that?
That's a great question, and we've seen some doozies actually. We've even had one wanting dental work that was not related, to sometimes with pregnancy you can actually have some situations that relate to dental work. This one has not. It really is going to come down to what we feel if it's here in California, and we have some guidelines here in California. They're not statutory, meaning they're not in law, but we have guidelines because mm-hmm. certain courts will look at things and be like, how much did you pay her, or what did you pay her?
Right.
And I've had clients, honestly, who are so giving that I have to pull them back and say, right. No, you can't do that for her.
Right.
So again, reasonableness, we generally look at it as, okay, what is needed during the course of the pregnancy? Oftentimes these birth moms are not working, so they have no other way to survive. Mm-hmm. Obviously, things like receiving state aid or food stamps will offset a budget for food. Mm-hmm. Is she caring for other children? Are there other adults in the home that share the expenses? So we something like a photographer at the hospital for the birth, if that was a request of the birth mom, we here in general would not see that as reasonable. However, if the family were to want to gift that, and if it was allowable as a gift, then so be it. But it wouldn't fall under, per se, pregnancy-related expenses, right. For the purpose of the adoption.
Okay. So, discussing these birth mother expenses, now we'll move on to question number 4. You go through this process, you pay your lawyer, you pay, an agency, you pay a service, and now at the 11th hour, the birth mother changes her mind. What happens to all your money?
Generally speaking, out there in the real world, it's at risk. You have to approach it as it's at risk. And one of the realities we start with every conversation with anybody who is inquiring about our services, about the process, is you have no control over the human process of this journey. A birth mom may have a change of heart at the end, and that's just the reality. Great question again for anybody to ask an adoption services provider that they're contemplating partnering with in their journey is, what does happen to all that money? What is at risk? Generally speaking, for the most part, you have to assume it will be. Here at Adoption Network Law Center, again, we pride ourselves on our commitment to our clients, which is to get them to a successful adoption. The reality of birth moms changing their minds, it happens. So we have a program where we built in a financial protection into our agreements. And not only will they not pay us again, we don't have any additional fees. So that's a great question to ask any smaller local agency is, if it fails or disrupts, do I have to pay another adoption services fee? oftentimes you're going to hear the answer is yes.
Right.
So here we do not charge an additional fee. What will be at risk usually is the legal costs that have been paid out for work done, say a social worker meeting with the birth mom and things like that. We don't protect that. However, we do protect expenses paid out on a birth mom up to a certain amount. Right now, it's up to it's a $5,000 cap, because that's about the national average. And just to give you a little bit of insight of how we are as an organization and where our passion lies is, again, the goal is to be successful and get every client to a successful adoption. If there is a disruption, a birth mom changes her mind and they've spent $4,000 on her expenses, oftentimes you can't really get back and ready to go right away with that. Right. So we reimburse that or advance it for the next one, whichever comes first. Right. So that they are in a position to be like, yes, I'm ready to go and ready to have another one. So that is something I think that becomes a bit of an obstacle financially for people, is when they do experience disruptions, right. That financially it's hard to recoup and get back to where they want to be.
And let me stop you.
They do have to come in with their eyes wide open. That it is a possibility, and if any place tells you that, oh no, birth moms, we don't have birth moms that change their mind, that they should be very wary of that.
Let me stop you there, because I just want to touch on something you said, and I think it's really phenomenal that that your I think it's really phenomenal that your organization does that, because, and I think it's important for people to understand this, that if there is a disruption or if there is birth mother changes her mind, and you have it in the back of your head that, oh no, I have to pay every from $1 again. Mentally and emotionally, that does something to you. If you know that a service provider such as Adoption Network has your back, it may make you a little bit emotionally ready to emotionally ready to handle that situation, and it also may help you kind of get over that hump when you're in an adoption situation where you're not 100% sold that the birth mother is gonna take this to the end. She may have her reservations. So now when you have, a service provider that says, oh, well, you know what, you're back on your own, after this, if this, doesn't happen to come to fruition, it puts added stress on a very stressful situation already. So the fact that you guys, are there and committed to your clients, I think it's really important, and people need to understand that it's really a great thing, and something that, kind of helps them, alleviate some of that anxiety and stress that they're dealing with. That's all I had to say on that.
Yeah, and I also think it's important, and I'm sorry, I thought we broke up a little bit. But I think it's also important from an emotional aspect, which is, you are bearing some risk, emotional and some financial, but if the entity that your attorney or law center, whoever you're working with, is bearing that with you, it does help to, get people ready and prepared and be less inclined to shy away from an opportunity that may not, everybody wants an ideal. Everybody wants an ideal situation. They're just not.
Right.
They're just not out there.
Right.
So we want to help, help support and catapult our clients so that they're willing to say yes, and it's worth it. When it works, it's always worth it in the end, and we always hear that. But there are some disappointments along the way, and they need to know that they're going to have somebody in their corner to keep supporting them and advocating for them.
Definitely. So moving on to our last question, what kind of help can potential adoptive parents receive throughout the process? And we could talk specifically about loans and the adoption tax credit, which is great. A lot of people have no idea what that is, and how beneficial it is. Any grants, possible grants, or anything specifically that the Adoption Network Law Center does. Things that could help your clients and or adoptive parents out.
Well, I take a lot of pride in this, and I'm thankful for you to give me the opportunity to speak on behalf of our organization, because one, we all love what we do here, from the attorneys to the adoption advisors to our front desk receptionists. I do think that we kind of stand alone in one aspect of the journey, which is we are there to guide every client through their journey every step of the way. And we have a department, a client liaison department, so that every client knows they have somebody to go to at any given time. I myself personally speak with every potential client before they retain our services, so that I could get to know who they are, what their expectations are, help manage those expectations, and make sure they're ready. I don't want them signing on the dotted line and sending payment in if they're not ready for the process. So we have a support system in place for our clients throughout the whole process, right down to, helping them find a home study provider, making sure they stay on track to make sure everything is going according to the timeline, giving them feedback on their profile. How many times is it getting in front of a birth mom? How many times was it requested? Things like that. So we are very, very thorough in terms of attention to make sure they realize we are working for them. Because, they're handing over a significant amount of money. You should know what is happening.
Right.
But I think more importantly, we do bond with most of our clients, and they become part of our family, and we become part of theirs. To me, this is my favorite time of the year because we get, email holiday cards, hard cards, and it's just wonderful. But we also have to ride through disappointments with them as well, and that's tough. But we have to take that along with it. I also think, again, the financial aspect is hard on people, especially when they don't have success the first time out. So, people ask us, is there any way to get other grants or loans? There's plenty of information out there. We have a ton of information on our website. Another thing I'm pretty proud of is we have a pretty vast informational part of our site under, our tabs to learn about what's going on in the adoption community, some availability, what grants are out there, tax credits, things like that. But I do think, and also, I don't know if I mentioned, Anthony, in the beginning, but Adoption Network Law Center specifically represents adopting parents, but we provide support services and wonderful, compassionate services to birth moms in terms of their needs and helping them with what they need. I'm always my heart warms when I have clients come back for their second, third. I even have one that's back for their fourth adoption. So that to me speaks volumes. But what is speaking louder to me these days is recently we've had quite a number of birth moms return to work through us again to place their child. It's not great that they find themselves in these circumstances again, but it is wonderful that they felt that they were cared for and that they had the compassion showed to them in their process to make them feel safe and comfortable, and find wonderful families. So very, very proud of that. And I really appreciate you giving me the time to express that, because to me, that's what this process is all about, is about everybody coming together and working together to be a success. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I started the session, talking about passion, and, through the, half hour we've had together, I could tell that your passion really shines through in your work and, and how you discuss your work. And, I can appreciate that because I'm really passionate about this area as well. And I'm glad to meet other, people such as yourself. So I want to thank you very much for this time. This has been episode 7 of Sessions with an Adoption Attorney. Again, this is Kristen Yellin. You can reach her on the web at adoptionnetwork.com. And Kristen, if you have anything else to add, that'd be great. If not, we'll talk soon.
Yeah, well, just also, if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, they can reach me at my work email, Kristen, KRISTINY, at adoptionnetwork.com. We have an 800 number. We get calls from all over the country, so you're also welcome to reach me that way, 800-367-2367.
Okay, great.
And I look forward to talking to anyone who needs information.
Yeah, and we'll put all that information in the show notes. It'll be available on iTunes and also be up on YouTube and all of our other social media here at NYC Adoption Lawyer. Again, thanks a lot, Kristen. I really appreciate it. It was great information today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.